everyone, Dylan from the Smart Economy podcast. On day 2 of Permissionless III, we're joined by Friederike Ernst, the co-founder of Gnosis. How are you doing today, Friederike?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm kind of fanboying a little bit. Before we were talking earlier, I've been listening to Epicenter for a very long time and love the work that's been going on with Gnosis. So it's an honor to have you here. Maybe you've said this story a billion times already, but for someone who is just meeting you for the first time, what's kind of your entrance into the crypto space? What's your genesis story?
I had always loved cryptography. So when I was a kid, I read this book, Code by Simon Singh. And afterwards, I was the 13-year-old nerdy girl who was setting up her own PGP server and so on. So cryptography always appealed to me. But I'm actually a physicist by training. So I went into physics. I did lots of research at various universities, and all physicists can code. So it was actually a fairly natural segue for someone who really enjoys building stuff.
You also have the generic crypto genesis story where someone came from another field and ended up building here. Yeah. So what was the impetus then for building Gnosis, and what have been the lessons learned over the years? It's an EVM alt chain.
Yeah, actually the Gnosis story is much longer than that. So we started in 2015. We were the first major dApp live on Ethereum at the time, a couple of days after Frontier launched. Back then, we were building a decentralized prediction market platform, to combat the rise of fake news. Only the term fake news didn't exist back then. So it was for sourcing factual information. That's still out there. So Polymarket builds on our framework today. And then we were so early that we ended up building a lot of foundational infrastructure for this space, right? So we build things like Gnosis Safe, initially to hold our token sale proceeds, because all the other multi-sigs seemed,
lacking?
Yeah, I was looking for a kinder word, but yeah, maybe lacking. Yes, so then we built things like CowSwap, Gnosis Chain, Zodiac DAO tooling, Karpathy came out of Gnosis, then we have Gnosis Chain, and a year or two ago we pivoted yet again to Gnosis 3.0, which is our dApp era. So we've built so much infrastructure over the year, an inordinate amount of infrastructure. And there are still close to zero organic users in this ecosystem. And that's quite tragic. So building applications that are both usable and useful for regular people like your sister. No offense, I don't know anything about. I don't even.
She doesn't know how to use crypto.
Okay, can ask it. Yeah, so she would be someone who's happy to do stuff on their phone. You don't want to you don't want to bring in someone who's never seen a phone or something, but so someone who's happy to use the internet should be happy to use an app that's built on Web3. So you have to abstract everything away, and that's what we're doing now. So we're building apps that very much have the ambition to become consumer products.
So I can log in using OAuth or something like that.
Yeah, so basically you can, we use passkey. The passkey actually ends up signing for your private key. So it's fully trustless, it's fully permissionless, it's yours, but you don't no longer have these are your 24 words, never show them to anyone, never lose them, or all your money is gone, conundrum that we used to have for so long.
So you mentioned just building so much tooling and infrastructure groundwork that is just used in so many other places, but never really drew traction to Gnosis and Gnosis Chain. What's that like to know that you had a thumbprint on so much, but it never really took off with your team and what you're building? Does that drag you down, or do you just take the wounds and keep on building?
Well, we're still here. We're still building. There's always the hope that the next thing is the breakout success. So I wouldn't say that there's no traction. There were people who were more successful with our stuff than us ourselves. That's true for almost everything we build. But Well, and I mean, basically, if you look at the numbers, kind of like Safe is still very much the biggest multi-sig wallet out there. It's kind of it custodies more than $100 billion in asset. Car was one of the biggest dexes in the space. It does several $1 billion in trades every month. So kind of like saying there's no success, I think that's underselling us a little bit. But yeah, so kind of we were never. We were always very solid engineers. We were not particularly outstanding marketing people, but hopefully that's going to change.
Okay, so zero success. I completely ate my words. I did not mean to give that at all. I think one of the things that is unique to Gnosis is that you just spin out the projects. Like Safe is no longer Gnosis Safe. It's its own thing. CalSwap is its own thing.
It still belongs to Gnosis DAO to a large extent, though.
Okay.
So.
And so, like, now what? You have all these lessons learned. You're not a marketer, but your engineering talent is like level, 110%. So now we're on the app chain. We're on Gnosis version 3. How does all these lessons learned, how do you maybe make some changes or make some differences to aggregate users into your ecosystem now?
Absolutely. So kind of what we do is kind of we look at what values you can create by building on Web3 tooling, right? Because obviously there are some drawbacks. So it's more difficult to kind of build on a truly decentralized stack. It's more expensive to build on a truly decentralized stack. And it's not as easy to upgrade and so on. So kind of like the list of drawbacks is long, but there's also a list of advantages, which is why we actually started doing this in the first place, right? And kind of, as I see it, there are three main advantages. So one is agency, so kind of giving agency to people. The second one is ownership, giving ownership to people and allowing things like co-ownership of large organizations. And the third one is user experience, because kind of when you build on permissionless platforms, anyone can iterate on that. I think, realistically, the third one is still a little way away, but kind of the first one and the second one, I think we can address those. And that's kind of why we look at problems that can be addressed on a Web3 stack and that will actually yield you a legitimately better product than what you already have. So one example is a neobank-like wallet. And basically, we want to make it such that kind of like anyone can onboard themselves. They don't have to know about cryptography or whatever powers it and so on. And they can spend directly from that wallet. So kind of they have a credit card that's attached to it. They have an IBAN connected to that wallet. So kind of they can send funds to the IBAN. They show up in the wallet. They can do separate transactions right out of the wallet. And this is not a tremendous value proposition to most people in the global north. So all of us kind of have access to fast and easy and cheap banking. But in many of the, in large parts of the rest of the world, this is not true, right? So kind of, so for instance, in Latin America, even having a dollarized account is a status symbol.
Yes.
So kind of giving people the opportunity to kind of just hold USDC or DAI, Sky now I should say, in their on-chain wallet themselves, that's actually a pretty decent value proposition for several hundred million people. Yeah. Likewise with kind of international transfers. So kind of like if I send, so I'm German as you can clearly hear here, and if I send funds the legacy way from my German account to an American account, it'll cost me several $100s in fees. It'll take 2 days, even with Wise. Obviously, if I were to do it on-chain with USDC, it would take me 5 minutes, right? So kind of, and I think kind of finding these edge cases and building applications that kind of like play to our strengths, that's kind of what we have to do. Another example is Gnosis VPN. So kind of Gnosis VPN runs on top of the Hopper Mixnet, and it's a totally decentralized VPN that kind of lets you circumvent location controls and safeguard your privacy wherever you are. And basically, because it is because it's truly P2P, there's no such thing as a blacklist, right? Kind of like all front ends that have to do location blocking, they subscribe to known IP endpoints for VPNs, and they block those. Which is why when they spin up, which is why VPN providers perpetually spin up new ones, and then they get added to the list, and they no longer work for if you want to watch Netflix in a jurisdiction that doesn't have that sort of thing. With Gnosis VPN, that no longer applies. So it's no longer censorable, and finding applications like that have a well understood business model and generate real value for real people. This is what we're currently doing.
So like Gnosis Card, Gnosis VPN, these aren't traditional Web3 verticals, but it's something that Gnosis is building out to maybe draw in mainstream users to start using these services?
Yeah, so I would actually reframe it. So I think I don't think we should see it as drawing in people into the Web3 space. So I think Web3 is just going to be part of the stack of the internet. Mm-hmm. Just like 30 years ago, people didn't say, look, we really have to build out some applications so we can draw some people into this TCP/IP stack. It's just it just ends up being the technology that powers better products without people actually having to know that it runs in the background.
Very cool. I do want to ask one question about Epicenter. You are clearly very busy doing all sorts of things in the Gnosis ecosystem, but then you also are a podcast host for an amazing podcast that I've been listening to for years. How do you keep your energy up for doing this part-time passion gig while also doing a full-time role in the Gnosis ecosystem? Do you use this as an opportunity to reset? Do you look forward to hosting very different types of guests and having different types of conversations? Do you view it as like another role of work, or do you view it as an opportunity to just have a little bit of fun?
All of the above.
Okay.
So I should probably say that I work for kicks. So I just really honestly just enjoy what I do. And when you think so much and so deeply about your own projects, it's easy to lose sight of what other people are doing, and that there are many people who are just as invested into their thing as you are into yours. So actually hosting all these amazing people on Epicenter it's a huge privilege, and it's very humbling. And it's nice to peer into someone else's head for an hour. So.
To escape out of yours.
Yeah.
Well, I love the work that you and your co-hosts do. And then just wrapping up, because time is short, what's one key takeaway that you've taken from Permissionless, and maybe also tie in a little bit of a bent into why you still give North Americans a shot when you're collaborating with this folks who are building here?
Oh, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the folks who are building here. It's an amazing community. And I think all countries have their difficult moments. And at least it's not flooded. So I think that's always a plus.
Awesome. Well, who do you want to talk to, and what's the best way that they can reach out to you?
I genuinely enjoy talking to almost anyone. Best way is on Twitter. It's the only social media I use, and I am TW_TTER. But you can also find me if you go to the Gnosis accounts.
Thank you so much for your time, Friederike. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to hear any of our other videos and interviews that we've had here at Permissionless, head over to the Neo News Today YouTube channel.